But the journey that is my personal transformation, I think, is something that we need to reflect on in terms of the larger picture, which goes beyond me as a person, Trap Rock Peace Center as an organization, and gets into the issue of our country, the United States of America, who and what we are, and where we're going. There's some interesting talk coming up here about economics and about diseases. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm no doctor, but I am an American citizen who loves my country dearly. And America today is sick. It's infected with a disease that's killing the country that we live in, the country that we love, the country that we cherish. And if we, the people of the United States, can't recognize that we are infected, we will never come up with the cure that's necessary to not only kill the disease, but get us back on the path towards health. And what does health as a nation mean? I don't know. Again, I humbly examine my resume and note proudly that I was a 12-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, an intelligence officer who served my country proudly. A couple years as a weapons inspector in Iraq, hunting down weapons of mass destruction. Tinkering in the fire department in my hometown of Del Mar, trying to learn about firematics and serving my community that way. But I'm not a sociologist, not somebody with a PhD on how society functions. So I can't tell you how to cure the disease, but I can tell you this. If you don't recognize the problem, you're not going to come up with the solution. So let's focus on some aspects of the problems that I can address. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at war in Iraq. Right now, as we speak. It's not a thing of the past. Some people think that the rock and roll game, video game, is over. You know, Marines rumbling through the streets of Baghdad, statues of Saddam tumbling down, Iraqis with their hands in their air surrendering, helicopters flying around, boom, bang, the war's over. I mean, it's not shown on TV over and over as it was in March and April. But the war is far from over. 3 Americans died today in Iraq in combat-related incidents. The war is far from over. This community has suffered a loss that cannot be replaced, a loss that cannot be defined. And the loss that this community feels is being felt in hundreds of communities around our country and will be felt in hundreds more. No, this war is far from over. This war, we were told in May by the President when he made a dramatic landing on an aircraft carrier off the coast of San Diego, the combat phase is over. It only cost us $55 billion, only a handful of lives. We don't, of course, talk about Iraqi lives because we only care about American lives, apparently. So we don't reflect on the tens of thousands of Iraqis whose lives were lost in the conduct of this war. The war was over, but now here we are, October, and we're told, well, it's not over. Not only is it not over, we haven't won it. Lieutenant General Sanchez has acknowledged this war is far from being won. We have a long way to go. He says, to win this war, it will cost us even more lives and more national treasure. What price tag in lives will we put on this war? I don't know. I do know that Donald Rumsfeld says whatever the price is, it's militarily insignificant. It shows how much he cares about the men he ostensibly leads, men and women he leads. We've been told that the price tag for this war has gone up by an additional $87 billion. But that price won't win the war. We're at war, ladies and gentlemen, and the reality of that war is starting to come crashing home on Americans who were fooled by and large by the rhetoric set forth by the Bush administration regarding this war. Americans who didn't understand what war was, what war meant. Americans who allowed themselves in their ignorance to be used by the President and this administration to exploit the fear that is inherent in us all, fear that has been enhanced, so to speak, since September 11th, 2001, to allow the President to prey on this fear, to prey on this ignorance, to sell us a bill of goods about Iraq, a war on terror, and the necessity of the United States to preemptively respond to threats abroad in the name of national security. But is it in the name of national security? Why are we at war in Iraq? What is it all about? Complicated issues, complicated questions, easy answer. It's not about the national security. Plain and simple. The president told us that we were going to war with Iraq because Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction that threatened the United States of America. That in possessing these weapons, Iraq was in violation of Security Council resolutions calling for the disarmament of Iraq, thereby signaling the intent of Saddam Hussein to do ill with these weapons, allowing the president to hypothesize a link between Saddam Hussein and the forces of terror that did strike us on September 11, 2001, that namely being Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, and saying that Saddam will transfer this weapons technology to the terrorists, and the terrorists will perpetrate yet another attack, but this time armed with these horrible weapons, these chemical weapons, these biological weapons, these nuclear weapons, these long-range missiles. And the effects of such attack will make 9/11 pale in comparison. Those are bold words. And when spoken by the President of the United States and echoed by his administration over and over and over again in a compliant media all too willing to help sell this message to the American people, it's tough for the individual American to say, no, Mr. President, because we are by and large ignorant and we are fearful. We are told to be afraid. Since September 11th, we have the Department of Homeland Security that manages a national mood ring of colors that the president can change at his whim, telling us just how afraid we should be. The Department of Homeland Security can put out terrorist alert notices that the media will broadcast to us continuously 24 hours a day saying, be afraid. Afraid of what? A terrorist attack. What kind of terrorist attack? Unspecified. Coming from where? We don't know. But be afraid. And so we are. We're very afraid. And in our fear, we look to the government to protect us. We say we need protection. So the president says, to protect you, I need to go to war with Iraq. And many Americans, rather than sitting back and going, well, what's the link? They say, okay, Mr. President, okay. I tried to warn you before this war that it was a war that has no justification based upon what the president was saying existed in terms of an Iraqi threat. No one listened. I tried to say this is a war that we can't win. That if you go to war is an A to Z proposition. You have to understand that. When you go to war to win a war, you start at A, but you got to get to Z to have victory. And Vietnam should have taught us that. Oh, we went to war in Vietnam, and we did some pretty neat stuff militarily. 1965, Ia Drang Valley, the first air cav took on 2 North Vietnamese divisions. Big fight, lots of dead people, boom, bang. And we emerged victorious on the battlefield, and everybody said no one can stand up to the American war machine. Because we got it all, baby. We got helicopters, artillery, brave men, willing to give their lives, all that guts and glory stuff. And we repeated Ia Drang in 66, and 67, 68, 69, 70. Heck, we kicked butt all over Vietnam. But in 75, it was an American being pulled out by a helicopter off the building in Saigon that signaled our defeat. Because you can't win a war when you're an illegitimate occupier of a nation opposed by a popular-based resistance. Vietnam taught us that, and Iraq is teaching us that same lesson.